Okay, so we're starting the record now. First of all, before we start, I would like to introduce you again to Anna, our new Android developer in the EU team.
Hello, Anna again.
Hello again. And Atanas, because we're canceling the previous record.
Oh, okay.
So I wanted it to be recorded so that everybody else can see it. Okay, so the first thing we need to discuss is the Android Oreo update that Gil started to work on, actually finished working on, and submitted it to QA. But we don't have the status currently. Dror took ownership on that task. If anything goes back from QA, but obviously we don't know where it stands, so we'll probably chase this one next week. It was a change to the orientation code in the intro activity. Relatively small change, but might have big influence. So it has to be QA'd very carefully, and then they instructed Asaf for QAing it. But we'll get the update probably next week.
Is that the issue that is that the issue that Gil was mentioning in the Slack channel with the orientation and that piece of code in the entry?
And the influence on that was on Android Oreo. Apps that just sometimes randomly do not load, especially when you hold the device in a landscape orientation and launch the app. It kind of messes things up. So there was a code that needed to go away, but removing any code that is related to orientation handling is something that has to be tested very carefully. So I know that they instructed Asaf about how to test it, but I don't know what the outcome of the testing was and where it stands. So we'll probably chase this one next week as well. That's it. Other than that, there is Javier, there's the cell view question that you raised in the Android channel. Maybe somebody here would know.
The cell.
You wrote something.
Sorry, which cell view question?
Yeah.
Yeah. The
cell view
I actually changed the code. Yeah.
You did already?
And I refactored the code, and because the view holder pattern that we were doing there, it was like a really, let's say like that, in a really weird implementation, and it was causing discrepancy between the rows and the images being loaded and everything. Yeah. So I did a small refactoring, which was already merged.
Yeah, just for the sake of the video, I'll repeat what you asked. You asked, does anybody know why the cell view holder cell type not equals item type, blah, 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 and the set gone old cell view, why is it like that implemented? You said that it caused weird loading when there's different cell types in the list.
Yeah, and so it was causing exactly that. So when there is a mix between different cell types in one list, it would actually cause the images to not load correctly and load it completely randomly. So for certain items.
What was the change that you introduced, just for everybody to know?
So so the change that I introduced, it was actually implemented in view holder pattern as it should. It was implemented in a really strange way. So in not the standard way. So I actually just shuffled the code more than anything to make sure that it was implemented in the right way for a view pattern, a view holder pattern, and pretty much that was the change itself. So and then it was reviewed by Atanas, and also there was a small MPE. Yeah, and there was a small MPE issue with a certain type of layouts where it was not there, that it was caught by Honey. And it was already fixed by her, so it's already in the latest dev environment as well. And one thing I told her that it will be useful if we see code which will probably can actually be null in a method, like when returning, actually just add the annotation of nullable. So we, make sure that if anyone else is using that method, we'll get a warning saying that, that code can actually throw an MPE for the future. So that's pretty handy to have and help all the developers. So
okay. That's good. So the change is basically what
she agreed, so that's good.
So the code snippet that you added afterwards was the change. If cell view holder equals null, that's the change.
There were actually, you mentioned also about 2 bugs that this was fixing, right? It is not just a refactor.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the bug was especially the image part, which it was completely off totally in the lists.
But it's not a new.
And I reduced the scope of the change to.
See it until now, because
No, we have a lot of that.
yeah, it kind of.
Yeah, it was especially happening when there was, like, as I say, like mixing 2 different types of atom feeds, for example, in this case. So
it's actually a systematic problem. I think it is because we're using something like aspect-oriented programming, and some people think that it's worse than the go-to statement. Like the class that I hate the most is the generic fragment, because like you have long switch case statements which are checking the type of what's gonna be displayed, and then doing different things depending on what it is. And I think this is the same thing, like the same pattern. You have 2 different things, and now like they must be treated differently, right?
Yeah. With the cell type.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So it's a systematic issue that they have in common.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so just to make sure that I reduced the scope, I only changed it for the lists. So the grid view it was also using that weird code, but as I was not so sure that I wanted to reduce the impact of the change that it could have. I only reduced it to only change it for the lists because I know the composite list layout is going to be refactored sooner than later. So from what I heard, according to Ran, so I didn't want to change. I tried the minimum possible to be able to fix the issue and then be able to implement the pattern correctly and then good to go. So
yeah, okay, good. So it's important for everyone to know also that something was changed in the view area, because it's obviously a major part, an important part of the code. Okay, I think that's it for my comments. Now let's do the usual. What we do next is basically everybody speaks on what they're doing. Because of the regional structure, it's kind of difficult to know what each team is doing and how what progress is done on every team. So we take some time during the weekly to discuss what everybody's working on, and then find some common areas or things that need to be
one second.
So Talik, do you want to start maybe? Working on currently?
Yeah, of course. Now I moved out of the Redshift project. I'm like most of my time on, and now trying to fix a couple of bugs in multiple applications. For example, DocTV, and now next I will help fixing some bugs with the CAN video and so on. For now, I'm still dealing with the bug, with the storefront bug, with the subscription.
How is it coming along, the subscription part?
I have solved the bug where the storefront does not close, but the problem is this bug needs to be tested in other apps, for to make sure that it works well in other apps, and to not to make any regressions. But the problem is, as you know, testing this feature is not that easy, because in order to test this feature, you need to have a release version of the app, because it needs to be uploaded to Google Play Alpha or Beta, and then you need to test it on your APK as a tester. But it's not that easy to get every app to get a release version that is built on this specific branch, and it's a mess.
Okay.
What
are you doing about it?
So for now, I'm testing with I'm building release apps for now for DocTV, for Baby First, and another app. So this can be tested. This branch can be tested on these apps, and also with Alyssa we will be testing with the 7 Sports Age app That
When is
Ruven,
it just important for me to know because it also might influence our apps, obviously, with the
yeah. So Ruven suggested that we test on the Sports Edge app
7 Edge,
to
yeah.
make sure. Yeah, 7 Edge,
When is
something
this
like that.
expected to get into the SDK?
So after, of course, after if the testing, all good and successful without any issues, which I think it will be, because I don't see how it can make any. Because what I do is just kill the activity after a successful purchase, which should be the default behavior. But of course, after a success, I think it will. If all testing were good, next week it should go. It should be merged.
Okay. I'll discuss with the team how we're going to.
Yeah. So this is regarding this issue, and I had like, for example, when I wanted to get like what is the convention. For example, if I want to build an SDK on Zap, okay, and pointing to a tag on the generic app. We don't have a naming conventions like for like dummy tags or test tags or something. Like for now, I had to name my tag to start with 0, okay? For example, 0.4. something, in order to indicate to Zap users that it's not your regular tag and do not like use it to build with it your apps, okay?
Yeah.
So, but the problem is when you start your build, your GitHub tag with 0, anyone who has a plugin with minimum SDK, you will not be able to use it. So it's not a good it's not a good pattern to start our test tags with 0. So we need to agree on some sort of like a tag to indicate that this is a specific test SDK. Do not use it as a project manager or as a developer. It was put there for a specific reason by a specific developer, and it should be used by him for his own testing. So
I think Ran has already addressed this issue once.
no, I don't think so. Because the problem is in Zap,
basically it was like you can use whatever you want.
No, you can't, because in Zap,
but you have to make sure
you are not allowed to create any dev tag any tag name you want, because you have the semantic versioning we talked about back like a month ago. So the Zap website enforces that, so it forces you to use semantic versioning for your tags. So you cannot like create a tag number and then dash my test. You cannot do that.
So my question is, did you talk to Ran about it?
No, I thought this is why I thought he will be here today. So I wanted to raise this issue, but
he might view this recording. But in case he doesn't, just take it offline with him.
Yeah. Okay. I will ask him.
Come back.
Right. So
what you have.
Yeah, this is what I have. Like I had general wondering regarding this issue, and also another thing is like for the composite, I also heard that it will be refactored, and I'm very happy because it's really about time that we have, like, since it's I think it's the base of all our application, like all application depends on that.
Yeah.
So it's about time to like renew it, to use like Recycle View, and so we get the performance boost. I think Gil, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
So yeah, that's it. That's it from my side.
Okay, good. Javier, what about you?
Yeah, so I'm working on a few things, and I'll start from the beginning. So I'm just right now the bits and pieces of fixing the prepared workspace rake script to be able to actually include the SDK one, actually including the plugin dependencies on the Gradle configuration. So I'm just testing that, make sure that everything is working fine, and then I'll do a PR with that. And it's not already there, I think. I remember. Yeah, it was there, but it was not building because there was an issue with the styling, that there is this Ruby cop, there we go, that it's helping with the enforcing styling, with the Ruby and everything. So just changing that and then pushing it and testing it. Then that's one of the things. The other thing I'm trying to actually, this is a bit of a, let's say, involving UI and all agreement between the issue that I found last week with the photo galleries, in which when something actually was not parsing correctly through, because there was an issue, for example, the provider was not, according to the specs, it was not providing data according to the specs, so there was an exception while parsing the code, and then the photo gallery was, didn't show anything. It didn't react to that exception. It just showed like a loading icon and nothing else. Mm-hmm. So I started to actually just say, okay, a simple thing to do is just, be able to create like a response for that, and then create like an error layout saying, sorry, there was an issue here, and then, please try again later. So at least it doesn't show that, the application might be doing something, but actually respond correctly to the issue. And so I actually started to do like how I'm going to test this. And it's like, okay, I'm going to start using RoboElectric, because at least if we don't have a UI using Espresso, at least I can unitary test the logic through something like RoboElectric. But then I realized that in RoboElectric, there is we have a lot of static classes in the SDK, which are used everywhere, which, for example, something like simple, like, for example, like a custom view text. There's a custom text view, I think is called the class. When it's trying to parse the parameters, it's using static methods from our utility classes, which it makes it almost impossible to test. Because, for example, when I try to use a custom view, it will actually call those things, and then it relies on the application context, which it's null for the testing, because obviously I'm doing a testing, a unitary test, and it's not like running on a device in itself. And then, so I need to actually use PowerMock to be able to, do reflection, to be able to actually make those things go, like make actually those, those static methods work. And it is extremely complicated just to test a simple, like load error, fragment. So that's something that address this, it will take time, because the thing is, what I've seen in the past, most of the code that are utility classes is being used in the pattern of just having like static, pretty much methods, which it makes it super hard to test. And to be able to change this, we will make, for example, a good use of Dagger, which is extremely good for these things, and doing inversion of dependencies. So, and be able to do dependency injection and, inject all these utility classes instead of having static methods. And, so it's a bit of a tricky scenario where I need to test something and I can't do it, or it's extremely difficult to do it because of this, the way it is. And I don't want to touch the static methods at all until we all agree upon, what we should do there. So,
what are you trying to test again?
So just a simple fragment. So like I just want to do a unitary test of a fragment using RoboElectric, and there is none at the moment in the generic.
What do you want to test in the fragment? That it is created, or the fact that it's
no, when there's a loading error. You said about the loading error?
Yeah, actually just the logic of the fragment in itself. So yeah, so I just want to test, okay, if the data loads correctly, then it should show the data. If there is an error in the loading of the data, it shows the error. So to make sure we have a test, and my functionality is working, and I don't have to test it every time on the UI. And then if someone changed later something along the way, then we have the test to, make sure that the things that are changed don't break, what is supposed to, do. And so
I would suggest that we use end-to-end testing, like UI testing, because in this way you can configure all the project, the whole project, and get all the metadata right. And then you can verify very easily whether you're seeing a loading message or you're seeing the data.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't want to use, in this case, I'm not trying to test the UI per se. So I'm trying to use RoboElectric for the simple reason, because it's a unitary test and it can be run in the JVM, so it doesn't have to be running on a device in itself, which is super simple, and it's really quick to be able to execute. And you can have, like you can have it in Circle, for example, to have all your views, be able to have a unitary test of your views be run through the JVM, which makes it extremely quick to, to test. So and then on top of that, you can have the UI, as well because that the UI fixes, it requires a lot of data issues and like flows to be able to get data and all that, and it's a bit more complicated. So and then I know there's plans for using I cannot remember now the framework, the name of a framework for be able to do performance UA testing and everything. So this is just a quick way to test my views and test the logic inside the fragment, and it's super hard because through those static methods it's super difficult to test, and so I'm trying to figure out which is the best way to do it here. So that's what I'm been working pretty much, and then there is, as you've seen, I've been creating issues in GitHub repos because I don't know where to report them. So some of them I'm owning myself and I'm doing fixes for myself. I don't know if you guys agree upon that, but I didn't know where to put issues that are, not like client specific related to like, any of the clients that I'm working with, but actually like, for example, another one I put today that we 3 different image libraries, or we actually have dependency in 3 different image libraries in the generic app. And so, for example, we even have like Picasso, and we don't even use it. And then we have Glide for only GIFs, and then we have the image loader. So there is things like those that they're not client specific, and so I just use GitHub because I didn't know where else to put it. So
yeah, basically these should come to the Zap team as part of the Zap team backlog. We can, in the regional teams, we can also take care of some of these tasks. It will definitely help, and for everybody's benefit. But it has to be coordinated with the Zap team. So at least let Gil know that you're doing it, or maybe add a ticket in the Zap team board. And if you don't have permissions to it, we can talk to Ran to add permissions to the Android developers if needed. So there is no real process in identifying bugs in the infrastructure or in the SDK and solving them. That is not part of a project that is working on. So I would say just send.
Yeah, sorry. We actually discussed this. Like it was shortly after I joined the company, and we decided that we would just raise issue in GitHub. Like my problem was that these were bugs that were spanning over more than one repository, and it just didn't work.
I think now that they have dedicated developers in the Zap team, it has to be coordinated with them in some way. I'm not saying that they necessarily have to deal with it, but at least so the knowledge is shared with them, because I don't know if Gil is monitoring the GitHub repository new issue. So it's best to just throw him a message about it, and then maybe also we need to find the...
Yeah, of course. It's whatever is best for them. I mean, the only thing why I use GitHub, and I think, Atanas, as you said, like it's just to have us centralized, the closest as we can to, what it comes from the issue to the code, which is the repositories themselves. Yeah. So I don't have to be dealing with boards, which are not the ones that I work with, eventually, but just use GitHub at itself. And then the people who owns the projects, for example, can, like as you will do in an open source, project, is something similar approach to that. And then also you can have a history in GitHub, which is pretty handy, to be able to understand PRs and issues and everything in GitHub in itself.
Let's just make sure that whoever is monitoring these projects is aware of it and just let it flow. It sounds like a good idea, actually.
Yeah, I don't think that anybody...
Okay, cool. Yeah, I will tell you again.
That's the problem.
The issues.
But I think now at least Gil, who is getting ownership on the on handling SDK issues that are not relevant to a specific, that are not handled as part of a specific project, at least should be aware of it. So
yeah,
that will help.
Yeah, we'll double check with him when he's back on from holiday. So.
All right, cool. Anything else, Javier?
Yeah, I have.
Sure.
I have a question. Can you could you possibly maybe write in the Android channel, or just like in a private message, because I still don't understand. Maybe I'm just stupid. I still don't understand what you're trying to test in the fragment. That you're inserting the views, or like what exactly?
Yeah, I'll just share it with you. So I'll share it with you, like the test that I'm trying to run, and you can actually see it. It's pretty straightforward. So, I mean, usually the pattern that I've been using in the past is that, so I divided views from presenters. So something like an MVP sort of for the front-end part. So I will have the fragments and activities like have the extremely dummy. So it's only about like something that the presenter will tell them. And then I will actually have a whole bunch of unitary tests for the presenters. So I can actually mock the views because everything is working through interfaces between presenters and views and like fragments and activities. So it means that I can actually mock how the views should behave if I need it. And also it means that I can test the logic of displaying things like in a unitary way. So not in a UI how it should look like, but it's just from a logic perspective. So.
What do you mean how the views should behave? Like they should be displayed, right?
Yeah, but in terms of
like for example,
connection and the connection is breaking, what the view should show when the errors come. And I've seen this MVP example with the Robo Electric, and it works really well. You can test the view much quicker than a standard espresso testing, and it's like for me that is a pretty nice solution for the standard quick, not deep test, the UI test, but standard quick test when you're doing something, adding, and then you're doing like a quick test that works perfectly. So I do understand that approach.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So
let's discuss it later.
Yeah, we can.
I'm just interested in why.
Yeah, no worries. I can show you later, like what I'm trying to achieve, and you can take a look. No worries.
And then the static fields issue was specific to views using static fields, or generally the usage of utility classes?
The uses is generally the uses of utility classes that we use them everywhere, and it's impossible to test with that. Like usually approach that I've done that in the past to be able to solve this issue is to actually have utility classes, but without the static fields. So the way you could actually work is you can have utility classes, which you can actually inject through dependency injection using Dagger, for example. So instead of calling like, so at some point you have a configuration where you can configure those classes. And then also it's great because first you don't have the static methods, and then you can actually mock those methods. And also the great thing is that you can configure, for example, like those behaviors for testing. So maybe for testing, you can have your own like subset of sourcing and be able to actually have your own graph for your entire testing scenario. And then you can actually do much more advanced behaviors when it comes to actually your testing, for example, implementation, that you don't want any of that code to be behaving, anywhere remotely close to your production code. So through like the separation of this way, like using dependencies, it's great to to be able to make sure that will never happen. So and yeah, so that's the question. So it's more of a like how to approach this for like in the coming time. So and of course I don't want to touch anything that I don't own. So but yeah.
Okay.
I've got an idea. Why don't you guys prepare something like for the Android talk where you can explain the model view presenter pattern and how
I think that can be very beneficial for everybody.
Yeah,
because I'm sure that not many are familiar with it, especially not how it relates to do better testing of UI.
It sounds like something. It sounds like something that's the reactive paradigm, right? Because the view is listening for something.
Sort of.
Yeah. So you can do.
You guys are.
You can actually use the RX Java with that pattern, and then one of the emitters are user clicks and users actions. So it's going both ways. So you can listen what's happening on the model, which it might be a network model coming over the data from the network or the database, or the user clicks or user swipes, whatever it is. It's pretty nice in my opinion, because, for example, for this instance, what I've seen today on the Nova application, I was changing between the paths, and what actually was happening, every single tap was hitting the network. So after a while, the app was freezed, with the spinning wheel because it was waiting for all the network connections to come back. With the reactive extensions, you can actually, for the next click, you can cancel the previous click, so it won't happen with that solution. So it might be beneficial to actually have a session with what model we would like to approach, like MVP with the RxJava and the general testing, UI testing of the inside of the unit test. That sounds for me excellent.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I totally agree with you. So
what you said, the dependency injection is something. It's like top of the modern solution, which with top brands using like Netflix, and I think that it's something good to be aware of and probably follow.
Yeah, start adopting at some point.
Yeah. It would be interesting, like if we can see how we can apply this pattern in our projects, because like every now and then there's a new fashionable thing, and our industry is the only industry that is more driven by fashions than apparel. So we need to see how we can.
Yes.
Because canceling.
Yeah, sounds good. If you guys want, I can do a thing. I've done it also in the past with, like when I was working before, I did this architectural overview, the sort of session with other Android developers where I explained to them, I don't know if you're aware of the clean architecture. So clean architecture, so it's based on like the 3 tier levels, architecture, and it's extremely, like, it's pretty old, but it's not been used so much in Android in the past. And anyway, I can actually do this with, if you guys want, I can actually do a session regarding explaining like how clean architecture could be approached in Android, the benefits of it, because I've been actually fortunate enough to be able to apply it with a major application that I've been working with, hundreds of thousands of lines, and the benefits it was just massive. And the way you actually, organize the code is extremely handy to be able to perform testing, and then to be able to actually reuse the code, to be able to configure, like promote configuration over conditional flows, for example. And so if you guys want, I can do a session regarding that, and we can, you can take a look if you're interested, and then we can decide like what to do. So
I think that we can start with the model view presenter. Regarding the clean architecture, I had a project that I don't know whether it was the clean architecture or the way it was implemented, but like there were some things that weren't really elegant. Like what I don't like about the clean architecture is if you use something simple like model view controller, easy, right? So if you want to introduce, for example, a new thing on the screen, you're changing the model, you're changing the view, you're changing the controller, and that's the feature. But with the clean architecture, you're changing the model, you're changing the presenter, you're changing the whatever. Like you need to cut through the onion and change one thing in many different places.
So in my opinion, it's like it depends how you actually implement it. Because if you take a look at the app, you got loads of things like video title, start button, things like that. So with the model view presenter, you got simple view, which says like, okay, this is my video, this is like show video, show button, show title, and then you can have different presenters. So it's like you create different presenters which show description or doesn't show the description, which is like differently showed. I've used that in a past, that I was just swapping the presenter for the same view pattern, or you are using the same presenter for the different view, and it works really well because you actually create on the view, you create just show this, hide this, animate this. The functions looks only like that. They are simple, single representative, how you call it?
Simple representation.
Representation, yeah. So they do one thing. That's what I meant. And I say like if you don't have to change everything. If you are changing like simple things over there, you don't have to change everything.
Okay, I think both are nice and good ideas for technical talk, because again, these are things that have values in the industry. In any case, whether we adopt them eventually or not, whether we can apply them on our code or not, I think these are interesting and important topics to discuss in the
Yeah, I think it will be interesting how a new generation of developers joining Applicasta can bring something from the outside. But like, I think it would only make sense if it's taken in the context of our code.
Yeah.
That's also true. It has to be relevant in a way, but also it like opens the mind to different thoughts. So I think I'm down for it.
Yeah, of course. So so as I say, like if you guys want, I can walk you through like the whole architecture. That it is actually it contains everything. So it contains everything, and then we can take it from there. And then if there's I think it will be anyway handy, like to understand how that because I've seen the benefits myself, and it's been great. So
Okay, great, sounds good.
So you can actually walk you through how that actually works. So.
All right, great, thank you. Who else?
Hey guys, good morning. Yeah, I was working on a date parsing. I got my first card, and I've noticed that we output the dates in the different elements. Sometimes we use date text view, sometimes we use custom text view. And parsing those formats is also not standardized. So we use the different ways. For example, date text view has its own parser inside with the default date, which is European based. So I was thinking of a way to maybe mimic what iOS has at the moment, and they're using the device locale, and based on this locale, they're updating the date format.
Okay, but for what purpose you started?
I started that originally for the card that I got from Ryan, but the card itself just mentioned to add the American format for the dates.
Okay.
But we have different functionality on iOS, so I don't know, like, is it a good idea to match the functionality over different devices, which is usually is.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
I actually don't have an answer for this one. I know specifically that in some cases it was important to use the same date format that is being used by the CMS, for example, so that it is actually parsed the same way that you would get the date from the CMS, but I'm not sure that this is the case. Yeah, I don't have an answer out of my sleeve.
But to whoever is more familiar with the date parsing with the Android, in our project, I mean, I wouldn't mind to talk after this Android talk, because there's like quite a few questions that I have.
Okay.
So maybe someone can like spend 10-15 minutes.
Okay. I would suggest. Yes.
I was going to say I have quite a bit of experience with date parsing, so I can help you, Alex, if you want. And
it's in the context.
I dealt with them and I experienced a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we need to understand exactly what the context of the usage maybe of the classes that you talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So I would suggest maybe raise the question in the Android channel.
Mm-hmm.
So that maybe Dror and Elad and others have maybe more experience. Ruben maybe possibly can help also.
I think there are three main points when we are parsing dates. One of them is that it must be consistent across devices, like the same for iOS and Android. And the second one is that it must be compatible with the CMS. And the third one, probably the most important one, is that there are standards around how to parse dates. So, like the best the best thing would be for us to comply with these standards. And if we have some like interpretations or creative outbursts, like we need to.
Specifically about the question that you asked, there is a reason for parsing differently in two different separate classes. I don't know the answer, but it's worth to raise this issue on the Android Slack channel.
Sure.
Try to pursue if you can give some examples of what you're seeing, and
Yeah, definitely.
a little, I think it will be easier to take a look.
Yeah, because otherwise I'll be just throwing some little patch that in the big picture, in the big round, it's not going to fix anything.
Yeah.
It's just, so if we want to drag this issue over and over, I guess it might work, but I would rather address it concretely.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that would be it for me for now.
Information on the Android channel, and we'll try to take a look.
Right.
Candidates for testing, parsing data, video.
All right, thank you, guys.
Okay. We have also Dror with us, but I can only see his chair right now. Dror, are you there? Oh, not exactly. Okay.
Well, his chair is there.
His chair is. Okay, Atlas, do you have anything you wanted to add? Are your iOS this week, or what's going on?
Not really. Like it's just finishing a few things like register, forgotten password, trying to integrate with several like UAT and production version of a backend that keeps breaking. So I have my mocks. But like I didn't implement them properly because the backend is very rushed. Like it has prompt standard post. It has get, like some things are sent as get parameters. Some things are sent as JSON, and like others are proper post. So like if you want to finish the feature, like for example, if you want to register, you need to consume all sorts of different endpoints. And yeah, still on that.
You're talking about the backend that the customer or the provider,
third-party backend. Generally, we are, or at least we think we are on the top of it. But like it's like sometimes there may be nasty surprises. And except for that, like. I thought that the Android code was like, I saw something very ugly on the Android code, something that I totally hate, these switch case statements, but now I saw something on iOS that I think I hate even more. It's not the architecture, it is the way how something was implemented, a particular component. And like it is like different, many layers of bad code, like living on the top of each other, and like it's I had to fix a crash, and like I just did some defensive programming, and like the crash is fixed now, but this class needs a major refactoring. So yeah, so this is iOS.
But this is iOS, yeah.
I'm sure that
I think it is going to refactor. So
yeah, I'm sure
they said that Anton was handling it, but yes, it's not it's not to be discussed.
Yeah,
I see what you mean.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we have some Android classes like
yeah. So for next time,
maybe
we'll find a candidate of an Android class that is.
Maybe it's the fragment Javier is talking about, the one with the static methods.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Anything else we want to talk about today? Share today?
Oh yeah. Before I forget, by the way, we detect with Javier that there is a major issue with our changelog. So and I think Gil owns that issue. From what I remember, I could not find the link that Javier shared with me yesterday, and I could not access a GitHub repo. But it seems our changelogs are actually like created automatically, and for some reason they're actually not reflecting what they should be. So because I detected that issue yesterday when PM, told me like, hey, this should be fixed and this according to the change log of the SDK. And it's like, look, I mean, it's not there. It's in the next release. And looking at the tags in the repository.
Now that you mention it, I think it might be, I'm not sure, it might be related to a change that they're doing currently on the Zap team with creating SDK versions. Actually, Rand asked me to talk about it in the tech talk, so luckily you reminded me of that. So now there's going to be a new stage in Zap for the SDK that is called staging. Well, obviously, you guys know what that means. It means that there's currently a stable version, which is closed for any changes, and it's basically released. There is a dev stage, but there is nothing in between. So it used to be that when an SDK version was closed and it was going to QA, it was still in the dev mode, and it will still can be changed and modified and edited and that sort of thing. So now they're adding a staging phase to the SDK. So it's not possible to change anything related to keys and assets and styling and that sort of thing. But it's still not in stable mode that is closed for production. And it might be that the change that they introduced to the Zap system caused something that is different in the change logs. Because change logs are created.
I think
it might be. I'm not sure that this
It comes from a few versions, actually, from quite a few versions ago. So it's not something that is new from today or this week.
Change logs are created when a SDK version is being closed, and it is related to that part. So it might be related. But it's worth also to check. Ran is definitely owning this part, so it's definitely worth checking with him. But for this meeting, it's important to know that now there's a new phase in the Zap SDK lifecycle that is called staging. And we all intuitively know what it means, but now it is going to be used. Everybody.
Come on, everybody.
Will it have a new tags or not?
Sorry?
Will it have a new tags? Like, do we have a tag for staging or not? Like when we tag the repository that we have the dev, or it will be?
I don't know about tagging. I know that it will be flagged differently in Zap. It will prevent from styling and assets and that sort of things to be changed on the staging SDK.
Okay.
Why are we doing this? Everybody knows that we only test in production.
Yeah, in my understanding, new staging is just intermediate stage between release, so it just indicates that we're in testing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a declarative state, but it also influences what you can do in Zap. Okay, I think.
So
yes, please.
Basically, I had a thought about, because what I've heard, we don't use Android Studio to debug.
No, we use only. I don't use it.
Only you don't use it. Yeah. So, but I've heard there's an issue with the synchronization of the with the syncing time. Yeah, I was thinking that maybe because there's a Gradle 3 now in preview, and I know there's loads of optimization coming over through the syncing stack. We can cut it down up to 1/3, I think, of the time, which is a lot. There's a new video which I will post on Slack, like I think 10 steps to cut the time down.
It was from the recent Google I/O.
Yeah.
We actually discussed this issue quite a lot in the recent Android tech talks, and there has been done some work in cutting down it used to be terrible. Like 2 months ago, you couldn't even run a build without waiting 20 minutes for it to return if it was a full sync. So we're actually in a better state now, but I think transitioning to Gradle 3 requires also updating the
Yes.
version of Android Studio, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken. And I know that Gil is in the process of doing that on his machine, just to,
Okay.
to do the migration. So eventually it will come, but yeah, it's a
Okay.
good point, and it was a major pain point. It has been reduced in the last couple of weeks by a lot. It used to be a real pain in the neck, but now it's getting better, and it will get even better when we finalize the migration.
So shall I start using Android Studio?
You shall. Yes, definitely. The sooner the better.
Brilliant. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That's it, I guess, right? Thanks everyone who participated. Actually, we were quite few people today, but it was very fruitful. So I hope that everybody watches this video and learn from it as well. So thank you. Oh, sorry. Thank you, and we'll see you next time. Take care, guys.
Cool. Bye, bye, guys.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye bye.